what is my hottest take of the year and for 2023. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is the end of our 2023 season of Hot Take. So today I want to briefly talk about my first year of reviewing cars, kind of just discuss how it was, my thoughts. We're gonna go over some score changes, and then we're gonna give out some awards, the cars we drove this year. So let's get started. So we're going to include 2022 as well because it was kind of at the tail end of the year and we didn't do a ton of cars. Some stats: we drove 43 cars, 30 of which had a manual transmission. We had a good blend of makes and models, but unsurprisingly, the most cars we drove out of all of the different brands would be BMW. We drove 11, and then runner-up for that would be Honda, which we drove 7 of, which is kind of surprising. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised at the variety we got. I mean, we drove like an engine-swapped Volvo 850. We drove one of the rarest Saabs ever made, which I actually didn't even know existed until the owner showed me. It's really cool. We have this awesome variety, and I love that all of you watch these videos and like them because I love making them for you guys. So before we discuss some score changes, I feel like it's important to go over my automotive bias. I tend to prefer German cars over any other type of car, specifically BMWs. I think I do a pretty good job at distinguishing my bias and remaining objective, but I do want to put that out there. I tend to have an affinity for BMW. I think it is important for me to put that out there as my own bias. I tend to prefer BMWs for my own cars. So I want to clarify the should you buy it score a little bit. I did kind of do this a year ago, but just for you newer viewers really quickly. It's kind of this like all-encompassing score. So it counts for everything: value, reliability, and generally, is it a good package? Is it something that you should buy? So that's what that is. Another score I do want to clarify is driver's feedback. I've gotten a couple of comments on this. Driver's feedback, it's a little vague. Like, you think it wouldn't be, but I think you could interpret it different ways. How I interpret driver's feedback is how well does the car communicate to the driver? So using the MG Midget as an example, it has a lot of sensory information. You feel a lot of what's going on, the engine vibrating, like even when it's on, like you feel everything that's happening. But it's not very confidence inspiring. When you hop on some back roads, you take a turn and immediately you're like, ooh, the whole car's all over the place, right? So that's why, even though it probably has, out of all the cars we drove, some of the most sensory information, I didn't score the highest in driver's feedback because it's not communicating super well to the driver what it's doing and therefore not inspiring confidence in the driver. If I got a second look at an MG Midget, my opinion might change on that specific car, but that's how driver's feedback is intended to be interpreted. I have thought about adding in a fun and handling or doing like maybe driver's feedback and handling, but I've decided against it. Starting with fun, I think it's too subjective. What I think is fun is going to be different from what somebody else thinks it's fun. I like backroad cars that are kind of tossable, right? But some people prefer high horsepower cars, or in case something like our 1987 Oldsmobile Cutlass that we drove, it's a really good cruiser, but on back roads, it is not fun at all. So like, it's just different type of fun, different cars, different purposes. As far as the handling, you would think this makes sense. Why not do handling, right? If I'm judging cars based on the handling, right, and then I can separate driver's feedback. I agree, but I do not live in Southern California, and weather in Michigan can be, say, variable at best. And I feel like only in like the peak of the car season in summer, only like half of my reviews maybe are in what would maybe be classified as like optimal like weather for performance. And that optimal performance is also going to vary based on the car. What tires is it running? What brake pads? What's the operating temp of both? Etc. Like, there's just all these things, and I feel like you can't really gauge handling objectively on anything other than a track in perfect conditions, the same tires, same brake pads, all those sort of things. So I don't think handling really makes sense. I already have to reschedule enough of my shoots as it is due to poor weather or other circumstances related to that. So I don't think handling really makes sense for the sake of the hot take score. So our first score change we're going to talk about is the Mustang Boss 302. A lot of you commented on that video about it, and thank you for doing that. I don't think I really appreciated the like full extent as to what this car is when I initially reviewed it. So you all educated me, and I had a couple other people kind of give it to me in the ear about it. But Ford made a lot of changes to that car, and they put a lot of work into that car to kind of make it what it is. So I think that it definitely deserves to be higher. It's not just a Mustang with bolt-ons, it's completely different. And I actually think what would have been better is if I had driven a regular Mustang GT and then driven that, I probably could have appreciated more of what that car is. But I still think the review is good, and the cool score is now 7.5, and I did also up the driver's feedback a little bit just because some of the other scores changed, so I wanted to kind of keep it all even. I think it's reflective of what the car deserves. The second car that we're going to talk about briefly is the Porsche 911S cool and driver's feedback scores. So I was kind of hard on the should you buy it. I was kind of hard on this car when I reviewed it. I looked at the price tag and I didn't really have a frame of reference for this car when I reviewed it. I went in with the wrong expectation for this car and I was just disappointed. I was expecting that kind of really raw, old school, visceral Porsche feel that everybody tells you that the 911 does, but this doesn't have that because it's a modern one. I've now rescored it and kind of judged it more off of like as a modern sports car, which is really what it is. And I did also compare it to the Mustang, which at the time was the closest thing on the list that we had to it. I still don't think I really have a good comparison on our list to this car. I need to drive like a new M3, M4, or I need to drive like a Porsche Cayman, something of that sort. I do think that should you buy it is still only an 8. I still think that the value on it is not that great, especially considering that a Porsche Cayman, like even within Porsche's own lineup, the Cayman is like 30+% less money. And I find it hard to believe that the Porsche 911 drives that much better than the Cayman. So maybe I'll drive one to eat my words and be like, oh, the 911 is so awesome. But there you go. That came up quite a bit. And I think it's now kind of at a spot that makes sense. And then the E36 M3s, I was kind of hard on them at first because I didn't want me liking the cars to give the wrong impression as to how I was going to score these. But looking back now, after doing a whole over a year of this, I think I was a little bit hard on them, so I kind of brought them up. They're around the 42-ish. I think that's correct on the list. They're good. There's better. There's worse. Mercedes CLK brought the cool score up to 5, which I think it deserves. I think 5 is now like gonna be like the base for cars that are sort of interesting, but not like super cool, but they're not uncool. So I think it deserves that. And then the Z3M and S2000, I both bumped up to a 6 on the cool score. These cars are all kind of like clustered in the same area. You don't see them that often. And they did make a lot of all of them, but you don't see a lot of them. Maybe you see the S2000 the most, but the S2000 was created and helps with like F1 drivers, and like it's just a cool car. So I think it deserves a 6. And outside of that, that's really all there is. Talk about the scores. So just some changes here and there. I feel like to kind of bring everything together. I think the score sheet shouldn't really be looked at as like this is how good I think this car is at this thing. I think that's part of it, but I think really more so as a comparison to other cars we've done. AP1, AP2, S2000. AP2 has 8.5 on the driver's feedback. The AP1 has 9.5. Really what I'm saying there is the AP1 has more driver's feedback than the AP2, but they're both very high. There's not really a way to quantify driver's feedback in like a number. So now on to my favorite part of this video. We're going to give out awards to the cars that we drove this year. Similar to Doug, the Doug score, he gives awards out at the end of the year, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to do the same thing. So I have a few categories. The first category is going to be fastest car of the year. And if you've watched any of the videos, you already know what this is. It's the 2021 Camaro SS ZL1. I can't help but have a smile on my face right now because that car was just too fast. I'll play a clip on screen. So fast and so good. It communicated really well with the driver. It just makes this glorious supercharged V8 noise. And I think I titled that video Almost Perfect. And that car, it is perfect, but it's too perfect. So it's almost perfect because now it's not. My only gripe with that car is it's too fast to use on the road, but that's a pretty cool problem to have, I feel like. Well, there you go. Fastest car of the year was that. Now, next on the list, we have the biggest surprise of the year. And I thought a lot about this one, but I actually think it was the Nissan Pulsar GTIR. When I went into this car, I wasn't really sure what to expect. My expectations were not low, but not high either. I mean, car's from like 90 or 91. It's old, it's imported. It didn't really look like much. But once I started driving it, it just revved so freely. It was so nimble. It was just cool. It drove really nice. And I didn't expect that out of that car at all. I mean, it revs out to like 8,000. I bet that thing is so much fun when you put a bunch of horsepower through them and modify them. So now we have best value. And this one I also thought a lot about because we have some cars in this list that are pretty good value. But I'm actually going to give it up to the M Roadster, BMW M Roadster. Runner-ups would be the XV20, manual V6 Camry, and the Fiesta ST. Those are both a good value, I think. But the M Roadster takes it for me. In a world of super expensive BMW M cars, they're all priced out at the stratosphere, for like 10 to 15 grand, you can get an M Roadster with like 100,000 miles around there with service history and a choice color. Chris Brower's was Estoril Blue, and he was asking like 13.5 for it. And like it's a pretty solid car. The performance is okay by modern standards, but it has a lot of feel, and it kind of comes close to that of the S2000, but just in a little more of a refined package. If you ever get the chance to drive one, definitely do it. Any preconceived notions you have about BMWs and how they feel, this car is going to erase. It doesn't drive like any other BMW. So that earns it this award for the year. Now we have the worst car of the year, and undoubtedly it would be the 1999, I call it shitbox, Toyota Corolla. Hands down, that thing was a piece of garbage. It was charming, and I'm glad to have reviewed it to get a reference for the car that's bad feels like. But I mean, it had like 2 of its 4 engine mounts. It consumed a quart of oil a week. Like that thing was rough. It had oil stains in the interior. Like, but all things considered, honestly, it could be worse. That it wasn't. That it was pretty bad. It was worst car of the year, and that's why it makes that spot. So now we have the car of the year, the one we've all been waiting for. That would be the E36 M3. Just kidding. No, I can't give it that. Actually, the Integra Type R. This car is not fast, not the best value, not even the best performer, but it drives like nothing else. Everyone says never meet your heroes, and I think that's true to some extent. It really depends on like how you go into it. I think in this case, if you go into it knowing what it is, I completely disagree. Despite its underwhelming on paper stats, it deserves all the accolades it receives. The way it makes you feel as the driver is just like no other car I've driven. Like even the S2000 was good, but the S2000 was just stiff and tight. The Integra Type R still kind of had like that street fun, like, okay, you could take a corner, hit a pothole, and like it's still gonna stay planted and flat. I think that car is the perfect backroad fun. Despite its really expensive price tag, if you look on Bring a Trailer or any other websites, I think you could still justify buying one, even for a 25-year-old sub 200 horsepower Honda. So there you go. That is our awards. And now what we've all been waiting for, the second moment we've all been waiting for, is the hot take of the year. So every year I'm going to do a hot take. What is my hottest take of the year? And for 2023, I'm going to say that Subaru is the BMW of the Japanese car world. If you don't believe me, ask any Subaru owner and any BMW owner what their maintenance looked like, and they will have shockingly similar answers. The only difference is the Subaru owner is going to tell you about how many engines they've gone through, and the BMW owner is going to tell you about how many valve cover gaskets and water pumps they've gone through. But they're completely the same. They'll both tell you how much their maintenance needs to be done on time and how important it is to let the car get up to operating temperature and take care of it. And if you don't do the maintenance, then it's your fault the car breaks. Same things, completely same things. The pop bang tunes, like they're the same people. I will stand by that. Fight me in the comments about it, but I 100% believe that to be true. So there you have it. That is the end of our 2023 Hot Take season wrapped. I hope you all enjoyed our 2023 year, our first year of reviewing cars, and I look forward to 2024 of reviewing cars. Make sure to subscribe if you're new. Like the video if you're excited to see the next hot takes coming out in the year, and comment down below. What do you think about the score changes? I'm probably every year going to do some tweaking. I'm going to try to wait until the end of the year to do any tweaking so that we can make this video again. But that's all, everybody. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.